Thank you, thank you, thank you. So today I'd like to talk to you, I'd like to tell you why I think more young people ought to try whiskey. I think whiskey is a fantastic, iconic Scottish product full of history and chemistry and a bit of magic, and that's what really attracted me to whiskey in the first place. When you pick up a glass of whiskey, you're not just picking up a drink, you're also picking up a story as well. Okay, let's imagine a bar in Japan, in downtown Tokyo, and a group of Japanese businessmen go in, and they order a round of 12-year-old single malt whiskey. And that whiskey's been on an incredible journey to get to that bar in Tokyo. You know, the whiskey's come all the way from Scotland all the way to Japan. But it was waiting here for 12 years first, in a barrel. You know, 12 long years, just patiently waiting away, maturing slowly. 12 years ago, I was only 12 years old. I don't know what I was doing, can't remember. But, you know, meanwhile, that whiskey was somewhere in a warehouse in Scotland, slowly maturing. But if we also think about it, you know, there's a lot of whiskies that are a lot older than that. You get whiskies that are 30, 40, 50, 60 plus years old. So there's a lot of waiting involved in making whiskey. We go back to the present day, so we're back in Japan. And when those guys come to take a sip of that whiskey, they're not just taking a drink. You know, in just a moment, they're drinking kind of 12 years worth of whiskey as well. 12 years worth of history, sorry. So on the west coast of Scotland, there's an island called Islay that's home to 8 whiskey distilleries. And I'm quite fortunate I get to go there every so often. And I think there's something quite extraordinary about drinking a whiskey in the same place where the whiskey was made by being in those surroundings. It really, for me, really enhances the experience. But even if you're not there, you know, even if you're in Japan, by drinking a whiskey, I feel that it can transport you to Scotland in just kind of a sip. You can be transported to Scotland even if you've never been to Scotland before. And it's hard sometimes to remember, but a lot of these whiskey distilleries that we know today, a lot of them started off making whiskey illegally, illicitly. And it's kind of through the kind of years and generations, and it's kind of thanks to what they did initially that they're still around today. And I feel that one reason for that is that they were very unique. Every whiskey that's created is very, very unique. And they survived various challenges throughout the generations, and there were lots of problems, but the reason they survived, like I said, was because I feel they were very unique. And they were competing against each other, and they still are competing against each other in terms of sales, on kind of general sales globally, but also sales in terms of shelf space in bars or in shops. And like I've said, the reason that I feel that they've lasted is because they're unique. And there's no two drams, so dram's the Scottish word for whiskey, there's no two drams that taste alike. And whiskey's made from only 3 ingredients, okay? Water, malted barley, which is this stuff, and yeast. So you get those 3 ingredients, you mix them together, and you distill them twice. Then what we're left with is called new make spirit, which is this stuff. This is actually from a distillery, and it's 70.2% alcohol, so it comes off totally clear. You then leave it in wood. It's got to be for a minimum of 3 years. It's either going to be normally in bourbon or sherry wood to give it a bit of flavor. You've got to leave it for at least 3 years, and then you get whiskey. Speyside in the north of Scotland is home to over half the whiskey producing distilleries that we have in the country. And even though some of those distilleries are literally side by side, the whiskey that comes out of them is very different to their next door neighbours, even though they're starting off with the same 3 ingredients and following the same processes. And over generations, those processes have become more efficient, but there's something I think that's quite magical about it, and that's the organic element. And I think that's where the kind of magic comes into whiskey. So there's a lot of craftsmanship involved in making whiskey. So from the farmers that are growing the barley all the way through to kind of the coopers that are making the barrels. And I think it's a beautiful thing that whiskey matures in wood. It's a very beautiful, peaceful, quiet process. And it can take several decades sometimes. And I think it's this maturation. I think there's a beautiful aspect in maturation, which is there's an art to maturation. And it's something that I hope never becomes kind of computerized or mechanical. And I think it really needs that human element involved in the maturation. So I've been talking quite a lot about whiskey, and I think you might all be quite thirsty. So now my lovely assistants are all going to give you a whiskey. So if you just want to wait, I don't want anyone to drink one yet. We're all going to drink them together. So when you get your glass of whiskey, please just wait a few seconds. Unfortunately, I'll just explain, as they're coming out, I had arranged for 150 of these fantastic whiskey glasses for each of you, but unfortunately the venue won't let me use them, which is a shame. So you're all getting to use lovely plastic tumblers instead. So I'm using this one as a prop because it's allowed to be a prop on stage. But I'm sorry you guys can't have them. So please just hang on to your glass. Don't drink it yet. Hopefully we've got enough for everyone. If you don't want one, that's absolutely fine. Don't feel you have to take one. Also, if anyone's under 18, please don't take one. And please don't drink and drive either. You're over 18? Yeah, okay. Got to be careful. Okay, I think pretty much everyone's got one now. So what we need to do is hold up the whiskey. So you can see it better in mine. I'll use this one as the kind of demo one. You can tell a lot about a whiskey just by looking at the color. So this one's got a lovely kind of yellowy, straw-like color to it, and that kind of comes from the wood. It's about 70% of the final flavor actually comes from the wood. So another thing is, if I'll twirl it around, you'll be able to see it a bit better in my glass, hopefully. You'll see teardrops form. This can tell us a bit about the strength of the whiskey. So they're quite fast in my glass, so that can tell me that it's close to 40%, which is the legal minimum of whiskey. If they're quite thick and quite heavy-looking teardrops, that can tell you it's quite high in alcohol, and you can get kind of cask-strength whiskies, which I quite like as well. So now what I want to do is just slowly put the glass towards your nose. Don't put it in too fast because you might get a fright, and just have a little smell and see what you get. So it's obviously whiskey, but can anyone, feel free to shout, do you get any other flavors? So there's no wrong answers with this at all. So I'm getting kind of apples and cherries. Chocolate, lovely, yeah, and really kind of sweet and honey and delicate. I think it's really nice. This is a lovely whiskey. This is actually a 10-year-old Glenmorangie. So you can tell a lot just by smelling it. You don't even need to taste it if you don't want to. But your olfactory system, your sense of smell, is very linked to you personally. And it's something that you've experienced. It might remind you of somewhere you've been on holiday, or it might remind you of your kind of grandfather's shed, various things like that. And it's a very personal thing linked to you. So now what we want to do is just take a very small sip, just a tiny little sip, just to wake you up, because I don't know if anyone's had 40% alcohol yet today. Probably not. So just take a really small sip. That's just to wake us up. Don't worry about the taste yet. So cheers, a Slanjava. Okay, just have a little breath. Lovely. Right, now what we're going to do is take a much larger sip, but this time what we're going to do is we're going to leave it in our mouth, and we want to kind of coat all our taste buds and coat all our gums, and I want you to kind of swirl it around almost like mouthwash. Give it a real chew. Okay, we want to extract all the flavors. It's taken 10 years to get from the distillery into this glass. So really, you want to get your money's worth, really, you know. So some people say to leave it in your mouth for 1 second for every year it's been aged. So this would be 10 seconds. So why don't we try and do that? And then when I go like this, I want you to drink it and then breathe out really slowly. Okay? Cheers. What do you think of that? A few coughs. It's all right to cough? Did you get more flavors, you know? But anyway, feel free to finish off that while I finish what I'm going to say. But the reason I want to do is that it shows you this is, there's lots of different ways of drinking whiskey, okay? So I feel that was, there's different ways to do it, but there's a big difference between enjoying a whiskey and the kind of academic appreciation or analyzing of whiskey. That was much more of a kind of academic appreciation of whiskey, you know, kind of taking notes and thinking about the flavors. But what I think is much more important is for people to be able to experiment with whiskey and try it and find a way that suits them better, okay? I think whiskey's made for sharing and enjoying. That's what I really think it's for. But unfortunately, in the past, there was a kind of lot, the whiskey industry put a lot of kind of rules in place that have unfortunately put a lot of people off, and it's still kind of affecting people today. So you may have heard people say, never put water in your whiskey, never put ice in your whiskey. Yes, have you heard that kind of stuff? Yes, okay, so some people still kind of say that kind of thing, and I think it's a bit unfortunate because you should really be allowed to drink it however you want to. So imagine somebody's thrust a glass of whiskey in front of you, and it's some old guy, and he's told you, right, you can't add water, you can't add ice, you've got to drink it. So probably to get out of that scenario as quickly as possible, you probably just shot the whiskey, wouldn't you? And a lot of people probably would do that. But by doing that, it's kind of making it a lot worse off, because when you do a shot of something, you're going to bypass your taste buds, it's going to jump over your taste buds, you're not going to get any flavors, the alcohol is going to hit the back of your throat, and it's just going to burn. And that's what a lot of people complain, and they say to me, oh, I don't like whiskey, it just burns all the time, it's just fiery. And that's probably because they've just done shots of whiskey. So that's something to bear in mind. So if you leave it on your tongue, you can extract all the flavors from it, okay? So it reminds me of a time, actually. I spent a while living in Shanghai, and when I was over there, one night I was in a nightclub, and there was a guy wandering around on his own. He's about the same age as me, and in one hand he had a bottle of 30-year-old Macallan, which is worth quite a lot in the UK, so worth even more over there. And in the other hand, he had a glass of green tea with lots of ice. And probably a few years ago, whiskey brands would have kind of not really agreed with that and said, look, if you want to drink our 30-year-old whiskey, you've got to drink it like this, you know, with a little bit of water or something. But now brands are slowly changing. If someone's willing to pay a premium price for a product like that, they should be allowed to drink it however they want to drink it. And that's something that I think is really important. Something that I've done, something that I've tried to do is trying to increase more people to drink whiskey. And I created World Whisky Day in order to do that. And it's something that's really taken off recently. And I want people to try whiskey in any sort of way. So whether it's in cocktails or mixers or with Coke or ice or whatever, as long as they're trying it and enjoying it, I think that's the really important thing. And it was while I was in Barcelona, I was studying there, and I saw one day on Twitter, it was hashtag World Gin Day, was a global trending topic. And as a whiskey fanatic, I went onto Google straight away and started searching, when's World Whisky Day? What's the date of World Whisky Day? And couldn't find anything. And those guys had worldginday.com as their website. So I was very surprised when I typed in worldwhiskyday.com, it was available to buy. So I bought it for about £12.50. And I made a Twitter account and a Facebook page. And within 1 week, I had hundreds of people from all around the world saying, oh, we're going to celebrate World Whisky Day in Australia, and we're going to do it in Alaska, and we're going to do it in Japan. And so it was really fantastic. It all just kind of took off. And then on the first World Whisky Day, hashtag World Whisky Day was a global trending topic, which was great. And it was on the front page of the BBC News website, and it just really spiraled bigger than I could ever have imagined. And it's grown a lot since then. So the first year, there was about 100 events worldwide. And in exactly 6 days' time, so next Saturday, the 17th of May, is the 3rd annual World Whisky Day. And we're anticipating about 1,000 events worldwide in every continent apart from Antarctica. And there are a variety of sizes. There are private events and there's public events. And some of them are now even so big that they're becoming almost like festivals. And they're expecting kind of thousands of attendees, which is absolutely fantastic. And it's all people, a lot of people that are new to whiskey coming to try whiskey. Because I see World Whisky Day a bit like St. Patrick's Day is to Guinness. So there's a lot of people that drink a Guinness just because it's St. Patrick's Day. And that's the only reason they're drinking the Guinness, because they've heard it's St. Patrick's Day. So I'm hoping that in time, if there's a lot of people talking about whiskey in the media and online, hopefully that'll be enough of an excuse or a kind of tipping point to help encourage more people just to give it a go. And if they don't like it, that's absolutely fine. But I'm just hoping that some people can come and try it again if they've had a kind of bad experience of whiskey in the past. And whiskey is something I think is incredibly social, and I think it's a beautiful thing, and it kind of opens up a lot of doors. And I've been quite fortunate to travel quite a lot, and I've been in places where I don't speak the language. And whiskey's been a kind of fantastic icebreaker. I've been in bars with kind of locals, and we've had this language barrier, but whiskey's been the thing that connected us. When they found out I was from Scotland, they'd say, oh, let me buy you a whiskey. And then we'd just, all night, we'd be kind of communicating in kind of international hand gestures and kind of laughing, but just sharing whiskey. And it's a really lovely thing, and I can't imagine another product that would be like that. With other things like beer and kind of long drinks, it's kind of your drink. You know, you wouldn't really share a beer with the whole room. Whereas with a whiskey, you open the bottle, you share it around the room, but you're also, as well as sharing the whiskey, you're also sharing in the moment with all these other people that you're meeting. And I can't really think of another drink like that. It probably stems back to kind of the early days of whiskey making, when it was made by farmers. Initially, that's how it all started. They had excess crops at the end of a harvest, and it would go off over the winter, so they would turn it into whiskey. And then they kind of share it with their neighbors or their friends. And then if we fast forward a little bit to kind of Sir Walter Scott, they'd all be drinking whiskey in quaches at social events and kind of passing a quaich around a room. And even today, I still think it's an incredibly social thing. And I just think it's created quite an interesting movement at the time. And I think in the future, in my opinion, I think we're going to see more whiskey drinkers than we've ever seen before. So just remember that whiskey is, when you pick up a glass of whiskey, it's not just a glass of whiskey, it's also a story. That no two drams are alike, and that you should drink whiskey however you enjoy it and not let anyone else tell you how to enjoy it. And make sure you share it with friends. And I think it's a fantastic thing at any stage of your adult life. I think anyone can try whiskey. And also remember to drink a whiskey next Saturday for World Whisky Day. Thank you.